Hello and welcome to the Level Up English podcast. If you are listening back again for the second, third, 100th time, big welcome back to you. If this is your first episode, then welcome. Hope you stick around. This is where we practice English and have fun while we're doing it. So I would like to talk today about elision. Elision. This is another feature of pronunciation. A few episodes ago, I did an episode on linking. We looked at something, here's an example from last time, not at all. So linking is often when a consonant sound from one word connects to the beginning of the next word. Hard to explain. So not at all could become no ta tall. Notice that T links and kind of moves to the next word. Not at all. Not at all. And it's a really nice way to sound more natural when you're speaking. And probably if you are fairly good at speaking, you might do this already naturally. So that's great if you can do that. But I love talking about this stuff because it's something that you may not have heard of before. And then it might kind of click. You might realize like, oh, that's why I don't sound natural in that area. And that's why this TV show is so hard to understand, because they're using all of this connected speech that we didn't learn in the textbook. So just like I said on that previous episode, textbook English is different than spoken English. And a big part of this is because of pronunciation. And in real conversations, we use connected speech. Connected speech is speech that connects together, it joins together. And there's different types of connected speech. So as I said last time, we looked at linking. Today we are looking at elision. Elision. And there may be some crossover. They can be quite similar in some ways, but we'll talk about what this is in just a second. I should remind you though that if you want any bonus materials, like I haven't planned it yet, but I think for this episode, I might give like a bonus mini lesson on Level Up English or some PowerPoint presentation. So if you are interested in taking your English to the next level and getting some bonus members material for, this content, then you can become a member at Level Up English. I've made the members button all glowy and nice now. I don't know if I'll keep this, so if you're listening in the future, it may be different. But if you go to the website, levelupenglish.school, there's a members button that's glowing at the top of the page. If you click that button, you will see all the information on becoming a member, which supports the podcast. It really helps me to keep going. And you get bonus stuff in return as well, including, by the way, group classes, which are very popular now, and you can join to practice your conversation skills with me, other teachers, and students as well. Anyway, let's get back to the topic of elision. So, elision, I'll explain simply, is the omission of a sound or syllable when speaking. So, omission is a noun, omit is the verb. And the meaning of this is just to take out. Let's omit that part of the sentence. Let's take out that part of the sentence. So here's an example. Really common example is with past tense ed. It can be quite confusing actually. So I walked to work. If you know your pronunciation, you know this is pronounced walked. It's got like a t sound if you listen carefully. It's spelled walk ed, but the pronunciation is walked, walked. And that's because we have that K sound. We go K tucked. It's very hard to say D, walked. It's quite difficult. So I walked to work. However, omission is I walk to work. Did you catch that? So what's happening here is that ED sound, or specifically that T sound, the T, is disappearing. The reason for this is because the walked ends in a T, and the next word is also T, to, right? So because of that, we're not saying that final sound on walked. I walked to work. I walked to work. Did you hear that? It's very hard to say it slowly, but I'll try. I walk to work. I walk to work. Something like that. I walk to work. So you might be wondering in this case, how do we know what tense we're talking about if past tense and present tense sound the same? That's why it can be important to understand a little bit of grammar, because we can tell by the context. Very often, of course, you'll just say, yesterday I walked to work. And of course, that's past tense because we said yesterday. If we say, I will walk to work, we know it's not going to be walked because we don't say will and walked together. So it might seem like it would be confusing, but actually it's not confusing. It's always quite easy to understand what time you're talking about based on the rest of the sentence and the context. So that's elision, basically. That sound disappears because it's easier to say. With most connected speech, we do that, we change things just because things are hard to say sometimes. We're lazy, I guess. There's also something called contraction, which is a little bit different. Elision is the removal of sounds from speech, like kt, that t sound before. Contraction is a shortened version of words that we write normally, but also spoken. So contracted words are more, I suppose, standardized, like there's a standard spelling to them as well. So don't is a contraction of do not. Can't is contracted from cannot. So that's somewhat similar. You know, there's some crossover that we're skipping out some sounds there, but it's a little bit different. Elision is purely about pronunciation. We don't write it any differently. So in this episode, or the rest of this episode, I'm going to be talking about a few examples of elision. But as you know, if you've listened before, I don't like to just list off random stuff to help you learn. Because honestly, I don't think it does help you learn that much. And even if it does, it's just boring, right? Who wants to hear a list of rules? That's not what you look for in a podcast, is it? So I'm going to try my best to make it a bit interesting. I'm going to answer a question and also ask you the question. I'll give you an example. The first kind of rule or pattern or example, that would be the best word. The first example I want to talk about today is camera. Does that sound weird? We never really say camera, do we? Camera. What is that? It sounds so weird. We say camera. Camera. I'm actually curious if I search for this on the dictionary, what comes up? Yeah, okay. So on the phonetic pronunciation, this elision, this emitted sound, is in brackets. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen here if you're watching the YouTube version. So the kind of correct, in quotation marks, correct pronunciation is camera. 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 However, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. No one says camera. And that's because it's so much easier to say camera. Camera. So that middle disappears. Camera, camera, camera. Right? It's very similar to the sound that comes next, so we don't really kind of make it clear. So there's one camera. So the challenge here is to talk about a recent image from your camera roll. So see, this is what we're doing here. I'm giving you an example and then a challenge connected to that word. So I'm going to do this myself. And even though I can't hear you, I want to encourage you to do the same. Even if you're on your own, it could be good speaking practice just to pause the podcast and try to talk about a recent picture on your camera roll. Or you could leave a comment below this post as well. So your camera roll is your maybe your app on your phone where you keep all your photos. So I have over 8,000 photos, probably dating back like 20 years. I think my first photo was 20 years ago, almost exactly. And maybe longer than that. Ugh, I don't want to think about it. Too old. My most recent photo on my camera roll is a photo of a very cute soy dog. When I say soy dog, that's a term we have here in Thailand. Soy is the Thai word for road. So a soy dog is kind of like a street dog. We'd say in English, a street dog. So it's kind of sad, but also kind of cute. There are a lot of soy dogs and soy cats. Dogs and cats living on the street. They don't have a home. And they tend to always live in the same place, I suppose because they get fed by the same people and they learn. You know, they have their little territory where they like. And there's a really sweet dog that I always see every day, and he's usually sleeping somewhere on my neighborhood. And they recently built a new shopping mall by my house, and the soy dog was sleeping in front of the door of this newly constructed shop. And I thought it was so sweet, it was so cute, so I took a picture of that. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen on YouTube again. And yeah, that was my most recent picture from yesterday. A nice cute dog sleeping on the street that I took with my camera. How about you? Let me know if you can, a recent photo from your camera roll. Another one now is fish and chips. Have you ever heard anyone say that before? I never have. No one says fish and chips. If I went into a shop in the UK and said, "Can I have some fish and chips?" they would look at me like, "What? Why are you being so weird? Like, what's wrong with you?" Do you know how we would say this? Make it flow like one word. Fish and chips. Fish and chips. Okay, so that and kind of, we don't say the ah or the duh. We just say the Right, it's just that sound. So fish and chips. Fishin'. So it sounds like one word, doesn't it? Fishin'. Fish and chips. Hear that? Fish and chips. And when you write it, you would put an apostrophe on both sides of the N to kind of signal that two letters are missing. So if you want to sound natural when you go to the UK, order fish and chips. You might know that fish and chips is a very famous meal, a dish in the UK. It's kind of like fast food. It's not healthy. It's deep fried potato chips, like chips in the British chips, not the American chips, and deep fried fish, battered cod type of fish. So it's very popular. It does taste good, honestly. It's really nice to have like a kind of a paper, what do you call it? A paper box of chips on a cold autumn morning, or something. Maybe morning is a bit of a weird time. Evening, let's say, watching the sunset in the park with some fish and chips. Yeah, really nice meal. Not healthy, however, so don't have it too often. The challenge here is to talk about a famous dish in your country. So think about one for yourself, just like before. Fish and chips is famous in the UK. It's very well known. It's spread around the world. You can even find fish and chips in Bangkok as well. However, I would say it's not as popular as people think. I mean, if you go to a seaside town or city, you'll see it everywhere. But I think a lot of people assume that British people eat it like every day. And we really don't. I would say like, depends on the person, but for me it might be like once or twice a year. It's not like a common thing that we have. If you do, maybe you want to reconsider. There's a lot of fat in all that oil. Another really common dish in my country is a roast dinner. Honestly, something that I just don't like. Everyone goes crazy about it here. I just find it so boring. But whatever. That's another argument. But a roast dinner is something that people have usually every Sunday for lunch. And it includes roast potatoes, maybe some beef or some kind of meat, roast vegetables, Yorkshire puddings, kind of like this bread like thing. I don't know how you describe it. A Yorkshire pudding, stuffing, sprouts, all this kind of different stuff that we have. And it's always covered in gravy, this meaty brown sauce that goes over the top. Often very beige looking food. It's like very yellow and brown, sometimes vegetables, but not as many as there should be maybe. But yeah, that's a famous dish, but people don't like British food famously, and for me, I just don't care. It's hit or miss. Sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's not. Anyway, that's fish and chips. Anyway, that was that one. Another common example of elision is doing, or basically any word that ends in ing. But let's say doing, because we would often say doing. And this one's interesting because there's nothing that comes afterwards, not necessarily. And I think the reason is just that doing, that ng is like a back of the throat sound. And maybe it's just a little bit hard to say, so we just get lazy, we don't say it. It sounds a bit casual, but it's quite common to cut this off. What are you doing? What are you doing today? Right, and it's really common if it's followed by another word. What are you doing today? Doing. So the last sound is a n. It's not a ng. I'm not saying doing, I'm saying doing. Small difference there you might be able to hear. So my question for you is, what are you normally doing at this time? What are you normally doing at this time? So whenever you're listening right now, what are you normally doing? For me, it is currently Tuesday lunchtime. So I'm recording this a little bit late. Normally, at this time, I will be eating lunch. Okay, that sounds a bit unnatural for me. I don't usually say eating. I guess it depends on the word and depends on the person. I don't tend to talk too informally, so I wouldn't normally say eating, but you could if you want to. So at this time, I'm not usually doing much. I'm normally just eating my lunch. And I guess that's what I'll do after I finish recording. So what are you doing at this time normally? The reason I ask is because I'm interested. Here's another one. 'Cause. This is so common that a lot of people think that this is a real word. I should try to get this one correct because in my accent, I often pronounce it a little bit different. I should say because. So we have this word because that often gets shortened to cause or even cuz. It can even be cuz. It's many different variations. Depends how fast you're speaking, maybe. So my question for you is, why are you learning this language? Maybe you could tell me, why are you learning English? For me, I'm not learning English, not much. So I'm learning Japanese, let's say Japanese. And I would say I'm learning Japanese because it's just a hobby of mine. Because it's just a hobby. I'm learning Japanese because I like it. Because I like it. Really short there. Cause, or cuz. Different ways to say it, but you could say both, or any of them, really. So I'm learning Japanese because I like it. Right? Honestly, the real reason was when I was about 19, I was really into horror movies, horror films, especially Japanese horror films, so much scarier than English ones or Western ones. And I would wake up every morning about 5 a.m., watch a horror movie, and then go to school. That was my routine back in those days. And it's a great time to watch them because it was always dark at that time, so made it even scarier. And I kind of thought, how cool would this be if I could watch these horror films without subtitles? And I suppose it seemed doable because a lot of horror movie dialogue is quite simple. It's just like, run away, he's going to kill me. Yeah, it's not like really long speeches in many of these examples. But to be honest, since that time, I haven't really watched many horror movies. I've kind of lost interest, I suppose, or maybe don't have enough time. So maybe it would be a good goal, actually, to watch one of my old Japanese horror films and see if I have reached that goal. Maybe I'll do that That'll be an interesting experiment. I'll let you guys know. But how about you? Why are you learning English? Maybe you can answer with "cuz." Another one now. We'll do a few more today. Suppose. I suppose kind of means like I think, I guess something. And when we're saying it slowly like that, that's fine. I suppose the answer is because blah, 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 blah. When we're saying it quickly, we often shorten it to "spose." I suppose, yeah, I suppose so. Suppose so. You'll hear that all the time and you think, "Suppose so? What is that word?" Well, he's saying "suppose so." And I suppose the reason for this is because if you say it quickly, it naturally gets shortened, right? Like suppose. Can you kind of see that? That first up kind of gets removed. Suppose. Hope you can see why that is logical. I couldn't think of a question for this one, so I actually asked my good friend called Mr. ChatGPT for an interesting question. And they gave me, why do you think people tend to resist change, even when it might be beneficial for them in the long run? Bit of a harder question now. Why do people resist change? Let me know your ideas. I'll tell you mine, my idea right now. I suppose it's because change is always scary, right? So even if you think the change could be good, it could also be worse. And I think naturally as humans, or maybe as creatures, as living beings, we always kind of want to hide away from things that might make life worse. Because you might think, well, life isn't perfect now, but at least I'm alive. You know, it could be worse. It could be much worse. And if you make a change in your life, maybe there's some part of you that thinks it could go really wrong. If I make no changes, it's predictable. I know what's going to happen. If I make some changes, life could, it could be really good, but it could be really, really bad. And I'd rather not take the risk. I suppose that's the reason why people are resistant to change. Did I explain that well? I hope I did. But let me know your ideas. If you have another idea or theory, let me know. And can you say "I suppose" at the beginning? Again, feel free to just practice talking to yourself. That could be good as well. Here's one that I found out in my research that I didn't know before. And I think I'm going to be telling everyone this fact from now on because this blew my mind a little bit. Ice cream. We all know ice cream, right? Did you know that the correct term is iced cream? So the cream is iced with a D on the end, like kind of an adjective or past tense verb, iced. The cream was iced. But you can really see why this would change because it sounds so similar. Iced cream, ice cream. Just that D slowly disappears over time. And this example of elision is so strong that I think most people have forgotten the original word. Ice cream is incorrect, technically incorrect. It should be iced cream. But that sounds weird, doesn't it? That one really fascinated me. I suppose if something is so common, eventually it might change into a new word, right? So ice cream, iced cream. One example could be this one I always struggle with actually. Facts. So I'm trying to say F-A-C-T-S, like a fact with an S, plural. Facts. And I definitely understand why this one has changed because it's so hard to say. So often that k-t-s is a K and a T and an S. K-t-s, facts. I guess you're very quickly going from the back of your mouth to the front of your mouth. The k-t-s. K is at the back in your throat, and then t is near the beginning. I hope it's not too loud on the microphone, that sound. But I suppose it's quite hard to go from such a long distance in one sound. So because of that, people often say like just a K sound, like facts. So it almost sounds like an X, doesn't it? Like F-A-X or F-A-K-S. So that T sound is omitted. That's the elision here. So maybe you could share some interesting facts with me. Let me know your interesting facts and I will let you know if it is interesting. The one that I found for you, which I kind of enjoy, giraffes, the animal giraffe, they are 30 times more likely to get hit by lightning than humans. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? I hope they're okay, but I guess because they're so tall, they're much more likely to get hit by lightning. So I wonder if that makes them more likely to win the lottery as well. How many of you get that joke? Maybe not many, it's not a very good joke. But yeah, that's interesting fact. So share your facts with me in the comments if you can. One more, police. The police. You know the police, they hopefully look after your society and they arrest people who commit crimes. Police often gets shortened to police. So that O or that the O sound is removed, omitted. Police. Police. It's like please, but instead of a Z, it's a S. Police. So here's another fact for you. Here's interesting facts. More than 90% of police officers in London do not carry guns. So 90% of police officers don't carry guns. And I would guess outside of London, it would be maybe 99%. I rarely see guns outside of London. I suppose in London it's more important because maybe terrorism, that's growing, right? It's a worry. And also the royal family and important people, I guess. So, you see kind of police officers in London with guns when they're outside Buckingham Palace, for example, they have guns. But not so often, perhaps. Let me know about the police in your country, maybe. Another common one is temperature. This is similar to the one we had before, camera. We often don't say temperature, we say temperature. So let me have a look at this one again on the dictionary. The sound that we are omitting here is the R. So rather than temperature, we're saying temperature. Temperature. Okay, and there are different ways to say this, but I would say it like temperature. That's the most common. So if you want to sound natural, that might be the best one to use. And one interesting thing I could say is adjusting to temperature differences. The UK is fairly cold. I went back at December and it was probably like 8 degrees Celsius. Mild winter, not too cold. Came back to Thailand and it was 34 degrees Celsius. But interestingly, I think I've adjusted to that temperature now. And one tip I have for anyone visiting a hot country, if you're not used to it, is just to relax. You notice that from the people here when they're walking, it's slow, it's relaxed, they're not in a rush, they're not stiff and kind of stressed and anxious, because that heats up your body and makes you much hotter. And I think a lot of foreigners struggle with that, but I think if I can give myself some congratulations, I think I've done quite well with that. And relaxing and not getting too stressed. So that does help for sure. I think we'll do one more now. I'm going to skip this one here. We'll do one more, which is a common word, and that is family. Family. Again, this one sounds strange. I never say family. We wouldn't really say that. Do you know what we would say? Family. Family. So that I is removed. Rather than family, family. Family. Again, if you say it quickly, enough times, repeatedly, that I will start to disappear. And that's why this is often not pronounced, because it's just easier to say without it. So I want to ask you, who is the funniest person in your family? Think about your family. Who's the funniest person? Can I say something that sounds really big-headed? I think I'm the funniest person in my family. But why would I not think that? My sense of humor is my sense of humor. Of course I would find my own jokes funnier than anyone else's. So maybe a better question for you would be, do you think you are the funniest person in your family? Or do you think there's someone who is funnier than you? Am I just a really big-headed, selfish person? If you're big-headed, by the way, that means you think you're more important than other people. So I know it sounds very big-headed, but I hope it doesn't really mean that. I don't think I'm more important. But anyway, I'll leave it there. I think I'll leave it there today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I think I might do one more episode on pronunciation coming up in a few weeks' time. Let me know what you think of them, if you like them. If you don't like them, let me know nicely, and I'll consider not doing them. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I don't have any Apple reviews to read right now, but we can head over to Spotify, like I have been doing, and read some of the new comments I've got over here. So you can leave comments on Spotify. Let's pick some at random. I've got a few recently. One from episode 257. David said, "Really, thank you for this episode." Simple, but I appreciate that. Thank you, David, for listening. I have a few actually from episode 256. Him, H-I-M, says, "I have been listening to your podcast for almost 2 years now. I want to thank you for all the hard work and effort you put in." That is amazing. Thank you so much. 2 years with me. That's fantastic. Hope you stick around for 2 more years. Will you do that? But yeah, thank you. That means a lot to me. Let's try to find one at random in one more episode. This is from episode 255 from Nina. Great episode and helpful for practicing pronunciation. Keep on with great examples. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nina. That was nice. And that's actually a good one because that was our last pronunciation episode. So it was great to hear some feedback on this as well. So yeah, thank you to anyone who leaves a comment anywhere. It's always appreciated. Let's end now with a quote. And just, the main idea behind this quote was to include some elision. See if you can hear it when I read it. This is from Christian D. Larson. "Believe in yourself and all that you are. Know that there is something inside you that is greater than any obstacle." The answer was something. I didn't say something, I said something. Something inside you. I missed off the ng at the end. So yeah, believe in yourself. There's something inside you that's greater than any obstacle. Motivational, right? Well, thank you for listening or watching if you're on YouTube, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone. You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. And I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.